Check one, check two. I think we are recording. Hello, welcome to the world. My name is Alexander Booth. I am the head program instructor and head facilitator for the data science certification bootcamp through IBM for the April 2026 cohort. This is your week two preview and week two review and week three preview as we get going into real data engineering and data modeling work with Python this week. So yeah, we'll quickly start by just recapping some of the big ideas from week two, how the live session went, all that good stuff. Thanks for those that did join the live session. It was a lot of fun. Again, kind of big ideas going into week two. We were talking about general coding principles, best practices, what is in our tool belt for thinking like a computer scientist. We covered variables, data types, data structures, as well as conditionals, loops, functions, etc. So it was kind of a fun class. We had some good memes that we found. I'm all about the memes as we learn data science and computer science. So this is all about while loop. While true will never break, so we'll just be running forever. There you go, how to get infinite money. We also kind of talked about AI. We talked about how the .ai URL code is actually from I don't know how to pronounce this island. Anguilla's country code. And so yeah, just like you may have seen, like .tv actually comes from Tuvalu. .ai comes from this island as well. So that's why you actually see like huge prices for some of these URLs now. Yeah, the Caribbean island getting millions in its GDP from its web address. So this is kind of fun that we talked about during class as well. But yeah, we'll dive into it. If you missed class, the lecture is up on my YouTube, or you can access the Zoom recording directly from this link. I think technically I'm supposed to route you to the Zoom recording because I think IBM tracks the clicks on it and everything, but I don't really care where you watch this, with YouTube, Zoom, what have you. And if you're just in the YouTube fam, hello. Thanks for watching. I appreciate you following along. Let's see, all the code and notebooks from week two is backed up as well on my GitHub, which is actually public as well. All right, so big ideas. Don't worry about memorizing syntax, especially if you're new to coding, new to writing logic, then having computers following it. Then syntax is the last thing that you need. Instead, let's work at thinking conceptually at a high level. What is a computer scientist? So that's what most of week two was spent on. We talked about our nouns, the what, the things we are manipulating. We talked about data, how it can be stored in variables with different data types. We talked about the differences between integers, floats, strings, boolean, datetimes. We also dropped in double and decimal because you can never have too many definitions for a decimal number, I guess. We cover data structures, lists, dictionaries, tuples, sets, as well as how to access data from those data structures. And then finally, we related this back to the real world. I think I pulled up something in the stats API, not the standings. I don't know, maybe just sports or something. And here we go. We can see that this is a public API. And what is it returning? It's returning a dictionary of lists, and that list is a list of other dictionaries, and those dictionaries have integers, strings, booleans. Wow, it's almost like it's all connected, which it absolutely is. So big idea here. As we start interacting with data in the real world, you'll see these data structures, these data types, and that is something to reinforce here. A lot of these concepts of thinking like a computer scientist, they transcend Python, right? Any coding language that you're talking about, JavaScript, C++, C sharp, F sharp, Rust, Go, what have you, maybe even cow. And you're like, cow? Yeah, I promise that's a real language. There it is. It's pretty funny. It's just literally goes cow, 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 cow. Oh no, moo, 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 moo. Yeah, it's pretty great. So there you go. And the farms and the pastures, all those cows, all those bovines are actually speaking code for you. So kind of funny. But anyway, big idea here. In any computer science language you'll be working in, the logic is going to be the same. We're going to be having to utilize nouns. We're going to be having to utilize coding logic, the how, the verbs, our conditionals, our loops and iterations, etc. So we covered that as well. Conditional if, else, else if. And I think thanks to Karen, she posted down here the match case. This is also pretty interesting. You may see different versions of this depending on other languages that you work in. And then finally, loops and iterations. So that's where that infinite money loop came from. For loops, they run a set number of times, while loops run until a condition is met. And if that condition is always met, then the loop always runs. So yeah, main thing to start thinking about before you run any code, start walking yourself through the logic, expect the computer to do work, and if the result matches those expectations, then you're in pretty good shape. Understand coding logic versus writing perfect code, especially in the age of AI and coding assistants, telling an AI assistant what to do, what to code, what to create, but being specific and wording it in the right logic will allow those assistants to help generate code faster as well. For those of you with experience in coding already, I basically told you to skip all the way down to 2.8 and 2.9, which is where we started getting dirty with the data. Gross. Where we started getting hands-on with the data. We went more deep into that in week 3, or you will do. So if you're new to coding, definitely just focus on the intro to computer science materials. But when we dove into the real data, we interacted with HTML tables using kind of proto web scraping. We also interacted with APIs like that example that I gave. And mostly the big idea was relating it back to those concepts of computer science. What are the data types? What are the data structures that we see? How can we loop through this list for each item, for each sport in my list of 20 sports? I want to extract some piece of information. That is now a for loop, but notice how I'm talking through the logic there. So after we manipulated and interacted with that data, we cleaned it, we fixed our data types, and we printed the data back out. So we went from reading Python to starting to use Python for actual data work. Uh, yeah, so that's mostly the big idea of week 2. Couple other things here. If you wanted some extra practice, you can dive into some of these Kaggle Learns, Intro to Programming, Intro to Python. They're both great. They're both only a couple of hours, so it shouldn't take you too long either. And they'll go, those are good. There's going to be a lot of Kaggle Learns that track with this class. So getting some extra reps on the side will only help you. We reviewed the week 2 quiz. It worked out pretty well. I got 100 on it. Hold your applause. Yeah, you got multiple attempts. It's open notes, open book, open computer browser tabs. I'm not gonna stop you from using whatever tool you want. One thing I did want to highlight though, when it asks you what do you think this code is going to do, you can actually run that code, right? Open up a notebook inside of IBM, open up a notebook in Google Colab if you're following along for free, run the code to see how it works, and then track that result back to the quiz. Let's see. Before I get into the what to focus on and looking ahead, I quickly want to just make sure I covered everything for week 2. Again, if you don't track with my GitHub, you should. I have a lot of fun notes here about everything that's going on. Um, so yeah, Python's everywhere. We went into some of these libraries. We talked about a lot of these topics. Oh yeah, NumPy. NumPy is going to show up in the some of the lab materials. It's mostly used for interacting with matrices or kind of matrix algebra, linear algebra. You don't need to know any of that. And honestly, in the quiz, when it asks you to compute the dot notation or like the dot multiplier, just run the code. Like you don't have to do that in your head. I don't expect you to do matrix algebra in week 2 of this intro to data science boot camp. Let's see. I think that's most of it. Then what else do I got? I always add a big ideas document, just my own lecture notes that I put together each week. So definitely feel free to review these as well. Let's see. I'm moving from thinking like a data scientist to building like a data scientist. I really like that as well. We talked about data structures. We talked about strings. We talked about data pipelines from opening, reading data, doing some work, and writing data back out. That's going to be a very common paradigm, regardless of if we're writing data to a file or a database. We talked about the variety of real world data you'll run into and why you need to be able to track those into consistent data structures, which is going to be a pandas data frame in our work in the next 10 weeks. And yeah, NumPy just makes interacting with matrices really fast. So that's like all you need to know about NumPy. Let's see how to use the internet as a data source, web scraping, APIs, and how we should be automating everything. Everything connects. Yeah, straight up though. How do we go from raw data, understanding the data types, understanding its structures, reading that data in, transforming it as data frames, using NumPy arrays for computation and machine learning, and then saving and pushing that data back out to wherever it needs to go. Sweet. I think that's all I got for week 2. Maybe, yeah, none of these notebooks, they were all kind of fun. Again, most of the work that we did was spent on introduction to data science. So again, if you want or introduction to computer science, so the couple that you may not have reviewed, the practice project, this was the last notebook at the end of the week that tied in these data structures, data, computer science logic into actual data sets and real world kind of data problems. So yeah, you'll see that we ended up web scraping tables from Wikipedia's page about countries and their GDP. So we're using pandas to do some of that proto web scraping over here. And then I don't think if we did any APIs, but we talked about how these data frames can be structured as lists and dictionaries, how we can interact and change both the data types as well as do some basic arithmetic on these data sets, as well as practice our loops. And yeah, pretty good time writing data back out. Pretty basic stuff. I think the last thing I wanted to show here, I also walked through in my lecture how to spin up a dummy notebook for practice. So, for example, a couple of these are the quiz questions, like what is the dot output of these two matrices? And I kind of walked through how to show that. So definitely feel free to reference this if you want for some of the quiz. Or, like I mentioned, anytime now through the end of week 10 for the quiz, if it asks you to do anything with code, just feel free to do that in Google Colab or in another IBM notebook. Okay, looking ahead to week 3, this is where we did some real deep dives. We're going more in depth in web scraping and data collection, and we're going to be practicing our real world data workflows. So again, don't feel too far behind if you folks spend most of your time focused on the computer science work in week 2. We're going to take that and build on it into real world workflows here in week 3. Week 3 only has 4 notebooks, so I hear all of you cheering across the interwebs. But each notebook is worth a significant amount of time. In week 2, each notebook was pretty short, maybe only took you 10 minutes. In week 4 or week 3, each notebook should take you 20, 30 minutes each, right? So don't waste big time. Take your time on it. Make sure you understand what each is doing and study wisely. So before we jump into my week 3 preview, let me see what else we got in here. HackerRank, Leet Code, that's always a lot of fun. Fun. I have PTSD from all my Leet Code practice from back in the day. So let's jump over into week 3. Let's see. I'll do my week 3 preview first, and we'll talk about some of these other notes in the forums here. So week 3, this is where things start to feel real, instead of being theoretical and thinking like a data scientist in week 1 and thinking like a computer scientist in week 2. In week 3, we're trying to do work. We need to go out into the real world. We're going to be scraping data from websites, APIs, in whatever format the data comes in, HTML, CSV, but maybe some more esoteric ones, XML. TSV, tab separated values, Parquet, Avro. FTP servers. Data comes in all shapes and sizes. So we're going to start interacting with it and talking about how we want to normalize these data sets into something usable with pandas data frames and simple visualizations. So as you work through the week, like I mentioned, it's only 4 notebooks, but I'll kind of preview them here in a sec. Data is messy. Web data, real world data. It's hard to clean up sometimes. So because of that, especially with web scraping, those pipelines can also be fairly brittle, especially as data evolves, data structures evolve, and data formats evolve over time. That's just part of life, and we need to be able to go back and debug, fix, and always be improving our workflows and pipelines. I still don't really expect you to memorize syntax this week. Again, to start understanding the general flow, the 10,000-foot view of how data moves from a data source on the left all the way through into a consumption layer. In our case, it's basic static visualizations all the way on the right. But that paradigm will always hold, regardless of if we're getting data from a website, an API, an FTP server, a database, a data warehouse, a data lakehouse, whatever. And that consumption layer could be anything from a static visualization, interactive data apps, business intelligence tools, even an AI agent kind of down the line, right? So start thinking more about the ideas, and we'll get into the syntax with practice and kind of rote labs over the next few weeks. As always, I have my notebooks already backed up, so if something doesn't look right on the platform, please use Google Colab, please use my GitHub backups. You should always have a source of truth ready for you. And yeah, by the end of this module, the goal is to start feeling comfortable going from, oh, that would be interesting to take a look at that data, to actually being able to get that data and start putting it into a format where you can start making decisions off of it. And yeah, I think the 3 of the notebooks all contrive like one large project. So it'll be kind of fun. I think we're going to be looking at real Tesla and GameStop stock prices, which if you know anything about American stocks, GameStop, it had its moments, and Tesla is still a pretty volatile stock as well. So big picture idea. You're not just responsible for doing making a dashboard or playing with data in your spreadsheets. You're actually responsible for getting it and then transforming it into something actionable and understanding how to automate those workflows. Getting comfortable here will only help you down the line. I think that's fair. Weeks 1 through 4 are all pretty like foundational stuff. In week 4, we're going to be doing our database week. So it'll be another big week where we start from zero with learning SQL, learning what is a database, going all the way down into interacting with uh, transactional databases as well as cloud-based data warehouses. But anyway, this is not a week 4 preview. So just teaser for next week. All right, let's take a quick look at the notebooks as well as some of our last comments here, and then we'll get moving. Let's see. Module 3 here, I guess I haven't done my notes yet. But yeah, data extraction, web pages, we'll be grabbing financial data. We'll be looking at beautiful soup in your first notebook. We'll be doing real world beautiful soup in the second notebook. And then we'll work on extracting stock data and visualizing it. So if all goes well, you should be able to make visualizations like this, which shows Tesla's stock price over time, as well as GameStop's stock price over time, as well as comparing their stock price to the overall revenue of the company. So yeah, I think we end in 2021 or 2022. So for GameStop, you should be like, oh wow, their revenue looks really low, but their stock price went crazy. That's like, yes, thank you, Roaring Kitty. All right. Let me look at the actual notebooks here. And 3-2, yeah, this is our just review of web scraping. If you were able to finish all of week 2, then a lot of this may look like review because again, it's just basic stuff with how to use a beautiful soup, extract tags and objects, and then extract the information from various tags within a web page. And then, of course, turning that web page into a data frame with pandas. Good stuff. Good stuff. Next, we went into the last three notebooks, which I think are just all part of the final project. So yeah, you're going to have a web scraping component where you're going to be pulling, I think, the revenues. I think we're pulling from a website, and this notebook may be too big. Oh, there it goes. Cool. Yeah, so here we go. We're going to be pulling revenues and stock movements for a couple different stocks here. I think we're practicing with like, oh, that's why there's so much. Yeah. We're practicing with like Yahoo or Netflix. Oh, Amazon. Yeah, grabbing this information, making a data frame. Good stuff. Then we're doing the API. I wonder what we're looking at here. We're going to be grabbing stock about Amazon or Apple. So we're going to be doing Amazon for the web scraping, Apple for the API. We're going to practice making our graphs. Yeah, there you go. And then all the good stuff is going to come in the final assignment notebook. This is going to be where you're going to take what you did in the first two parts where we reviewed how to pull Amazon data with web scraping and Apple data from an API. And you're going to put it all together to grab data from Tesla and GameStop and make some pretty visualizations, which mine didn't render in GitHub, but you also saw the graphs already in their output here. So yeah, pretty fun week. Excited to see the visualizations you make. Feel free to like customize colors, add the actual dates and format stuff if differently if you want. You always have creativity with these notebooks. And remember, the only thing that's graded is going to be the end of week quiz, as is tradition. All right, last couple things here. Karen put some awesome stuff here about the Zen of Python. Great poem. Definitely read it if you can. If you do import this, I think this all prints out. So definitely find some of these Easter eggs around Python and automation and coding, especially if you don't have much exposure in that space today. And then finally, this also some good stuff. Karen put some information and resources around here about what we call dynamic web pages, which are typically websites that kind of render their information on the fly, kind of with a front end language usually. Those types of websites are really, really difficult to scrape using Beautiful Soup and Pandas. So there needs to be some other solutions like with Selenium and stuff out there, Selenium Splinter to be able to do that. So good stuff here from Karen. Good additional content to really supplement the week. As usual, our live session is Monday at I should say the time if it goes on my YouTube. Whatever. It's Monday at kind of 1 o'clock Eastern. So we'll see you there. But I haven't shared the link, so hopefully you don't randomly find me. That's why we have wait rooms now. But yeah, we'll see you on Monday at the normal time. And same deal, we'll review kind of the concepts of web scraping, APIs, definitely in more detail than last week, as we finally have the space to do that. Don't forget to do your quiz. Please try and participate in the forums. Again, they're kind of slow this week as well. So there's a couple of good questions that I dropped into our actual class discussion for the week around web scraping and ethics. So definitely try and participate that if you can, as well as like start thinking about what is data mining. I think that's a really interesting question as well. So I put some thoughts in, would love to see yours. And otherwise, I will see you in our next class. Thanks, everybody. Have a great weekend. Study hard, study right, and don't feel too overwhelmed. You got this. You're killing it just by showing up and watching this video. So appreciate you. Have a good night, and I'll see you in the next one. Thanks, everybody.